Welcome to Focus. I'm Deborah Palmer. As you know, at the turn of the century, about 9 million immigrants were processed through Ellis Island, and they were faced with a new world, new language, new political structure, a new culture. They're faced with a lot of unknowns. And here to talk to us today, we're hoping to get Audrey Neenan and Ross Lehman, who are appearing in Tintypes. But instead, we got two characters, Charlie and Emma. Welcome to the show. I'm pleased to have you anyway, since they couldn't come. First, I wanted to know, what were your expectations of America when you came over on the boat, before stepping off the boat?
Well, it was the land of opportunity. It was everything we ever wanted, what we were escaping from, the elements of our own societies that we were leaving, that didn't have the
what
freedom.
What were you leaving?
Repression, religious repression, educational repression. I was not to be able to study unless I came over to America. I had to leave home because I was going to be prevented from studying.
Is that because you were Jewish?
No, it's because I couldn't read. No. It was partially because of Jewish oppression in Russia, yes. And it was also the attitude towards women at that time. We just weren't expected to.
What, second-class citizens?
Yes. Oh, well, yes. Worse, because we weren't even being denied an education. It was not even thought of. It wasn't, and it wasn't something we could argue with. We couldn't say, well, I shall educate myself, because there were no opportunities. So.
Since that was a given and you were raised with it, didn't you just accept it? I'm sure many people accepted it. Or did that bother you?
Yes, it did bother me, and no, I didn't accept it. I came over here, and on the boat, it was coming over. I came with my sister. I dragged her out, too. I told her we were just going downtown Moscow for a couple of hours. But we came over, and we were very excited on the boat, especially when the Statue of Liberty emerged from the mist. It was really quite extraordinary.
How about you, Charlie? What were you thinking at the time? I see you're still wearing your tag.
One of the first things I did when I got here was...
And he's a new man for it.
I'm a new man.
Did that hurt doing that, or is that your sign of freedom?
No, that's wonderful.
It's wonderful. Why
I'm
is it
not
so
tagged
wonderful?
anymore.
What were you leaving?
Poverty and everything here.
Well, where are you from?
Poland. Będzin and Sosnowiec. It's a small town, about, well, exactly 283 people, now 282.
So you left your whole family?
What was left?
Wasn't that difficult for you? I mean, as much as this is the new world, still you're uprooting yourself. What did you want out of America?
Everything is possible here. Everything. Still is.
Okay, you had your expectations.
Except for family dinners.
You had your expectations of the new world to step off, and now with all this freedom. Was that really true? What were you suited for as far as a job?
I worked in a factory, which was very hard. I'm not as strong as Emma, even.
Psychologically or physically?
Oh, psychologically.
Thank you.
Very strong, but physically I don't have... I'm a small person.
But
with a big heart. But I didn't last very long at the factory. I had to find other means. I got too tired.
What he didn't know, and what he had to be educated to, was the fact that he was getting too tired because his hours were too long. He'd come to America to think that this was everything, all the land of opportunity, as I did. And I began working in a corset factory, and after a few weeks the work became unbearable.
How many hours a day did you work?
I suffered from violent headaches, and he as well, but he did not know that this was not prime conditions. He did not know that outside the streets were lined with gold, and that people were making... I've always said that there is always someone who will make a great deal of money off the labors of others. And this was abominable conditions.
Was it hard to get out of it, though? I mean, you're doing it day in and day out. It becomes so routine. How hard was it for you to get out of that and to move on?
It's never difficult for me to move on. It's never difficult to try something else. I didn't know that, I didn't think that I was being worked too hard, or that the hours were too long. I would have been willing to do that. I think that I thought I failed.
Why? At what?
At not pulling my weight. I thought I had to do something that I could succeed in.
That's right.
And I do now.
Why don't you work 18 hours a day? Always. You have no time for your family or religious activities. You have no time.
And how
And
much
this was
were
the
you...
land of
I
opportunity.
had no job in Poland, though.
You
I
have
had
no life here
opportunity
with
to
your
make
job.
any money.
Okay, now you're
So serious.
you're a typical immigrant, and you're assimilating. What do you consider yourself?
Well, I expected that things were going to be different here. You said it must be difficult to change, and when you're working so hard and you come over here, well, it's not difficult to make the decision to come over here. I was not going to be educated. I simply said no. I do not accept that. I came over here. It was not what I expected. I said no.
So
I
you
do not
consider
accept
yourself an anarchist?
Yes, and proud of it.
How do you feel about that, Charlie?
He thinks I'm an ingrate.
Sometimes I think she's an ingrate.
Why? Because
I
we've
think
given
she's
her this land of
forgotten Russia at
opportunity?
times. I haven't forgotten Poland.
Could you ever go back?
No.
Why not?
I couldn't breathe there. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't work. I couldn't eat. There are wonders here to be appreciated. There's beauty here.
Okay, you seem very indignant about his reaction, but could you ever go back to Russia?
No, I quite agree with him. There is beauty here. There is wonder. There's freedom. You just have to have the courage to ask for it, and it will be given to you. But yes, I did go back. I was deported shortly after the revolution, and I came back disillusioned. It was no better off in Russia than it was pre-revolution days. It was just as oppressive. It had taken on a new form. Out of anomaly, we had more chaos. And
Did you come back as a different person after seeing what you compared America then again to Russia? Was your perspective any
I did
different?
a great deal of traveling, and this is after I had been in jail here for advocating anarchist activities. Now, we must define anarchist activities because there are a good many who would say that it's simply asking for a piece of bread and...
Or taking it.
Yeah.
But don't you feel you deserve it, Charlie? You've worked hard. You're 18 hours a day in the factory.
If I earn it, yes.
I'm not asking for bread without earning it. I'm asking for a reasonable wage. I'm asking that other people do not make abominable profits off the labors of others. The man who you work for does not have to beg for his bread.
The Tsar didn't do that.
Yes, yes. Of course he did. I don't consider it any better over there then. Gotcha.
We have smaller Tsars here.
Yes, J.P. Morgan.
J.P. Morgan.
But what you were
Mr.
fighting for was
Astor.
justifiable. Okay. What else did you? You were inciting workers to riot.
Oh, there
For
were
you, it's
parties.
justifiable.
There were parties. It was nothing but the old gang getting together on Friday night.
What did you do?
We took over factories. We caused a little bit of trouble, but
Did they listen to you?
they certainly did. They deported me. They listened to me because they had no
Choice.
or better voice of reason. This is the words I was going to use. They had every choice, and they did listen to me. Yes.
You had mentioned before, we were just discussing before, how you stood out because you were a woman, not only an anarchist, but a female anarchist. Could you have escaped? And you changed your accent a little?
Yes, I completely lost my accent and studied with a professor from Iowa to make the accent completely flat so as to move in and out of anarchist circles more freely.
Then how did they finally catch you?
Well, it's actually, that was where my underground work. As a speaker, I was always myself. And I spoke out at any occasion. And at one point, a man, a friend of mine, made an assassination attempt at a workers' strike riot. The man, I do not advocate the use of guns, but the man was an evil man. I do not even morally judge my friend's actions, but a friend of ours supported us politically, who was the head of a newspaper, Mr. Most. And shortly after the assassination attempt, he pulled out completely and withdrew his support, and in fact caused a great deal of trouble in editorials. And so I attended a lecture of his with a bullwhip under my arm. And when he began to spout off in his foolish lying rhetoric, I stood up and bullwhipped the man and demanded a public accounting for his change of heart.
So how did he react? Did he change his heart?
Well, he was, most notably, I'd say he was angry, a little bit upset with me.
So
no,
you were provoking, too. You wanted people to notice you.
Well, yes, but you have to stand up before you can be seen in a crowd of people who are sitting down around you, you know. It's, you just hit the streets. It's, hit the streets. I like that. I think I'll write a book with that name.
Now you also, I want to ask Charlie what he feels about, she advocated birth control. How do you feel about that? It's a very, very new idea.
It's embarrassing. I don't know. She's very serious. I don't play with nature, I don't think, the way that you would demand. I do not make demands on nature that way.
But you see, how can you have all these kids around and you can't support them, can't feed them? There has to be something, right?
Yes, a million little Leibovitzes all around. Would you like that?
If I could love every one of them, I suppose I would, yes.
Or you could support them?
I'd make sure I did.
How did others react to you? Do they react the same way Charlie has?
Well, no, because it was a very new concept. Certainly in ancient times, forms of birth control were used, but a woman had no choice. And the reason that I became an advocate of birth control, and I knew no way myself, and I would not perform an abortion, although I was a nurse and had served as a nurse in a penitentiary. And I saw women in the most desperate of conditions when they had a child that they deeply could not and did not want to bring into the world. It was not for moral reasons that I opposed abortion, but I saw the physical, yes, I saw the physical reactions of women who had had them, and it was just not, it was not safe. But a woman who was married, I was married at one point, and I did not like it, and a man asked me to marry him the second time, and he said, of course, you will stop your activities.
Would you ever stop them for a man?
No, certainly not. I mean, unless he was going to take me out to dinner and dancing, perhaps one night I'd skip a lecture. See, I'm not so serious.
Not so humorless.
Yes. He's introduced me to art and photography. He's a photographer.
That was the step after after the factory. You went on to photography, right? Okay, now Charlie.
I spend hours
he makes
with
me
this one.
Smile.
But why? Did you just like seeing people smile? Did you try to attract other women to you?
Oh,
what was the reason
yes.
you went into photography?
Certainly not to attract women to me, although I love people, I love to meet them, and I love to take their pictures. And I love to get them to smile and laugh.
Well, you have one way of making me smile and laugh. When you sing, you seem to be a very patriotic person. That's very admirable. And you have one song that bespeaks your patriotism. I believe it's Yankee Doodle Dandy. Could you sing a few
Yes,
bars
I've
for me?
dropped my accent, too. I don't know if you've noticed or not. But, yeah, I'll sing it to you. When I sang it when I got off the boat, when I saw America. And I also ripped off my tag and threw down my bags. I kissed the ground. I prayed. I said, thank you. I said, thank you. And a coin was dropped into my hat, and I thought it was from God.
Yeah.
Although
Did you ever find out who it was from?
No, I didn't, but I think maybe someone thought I was begging.
Would you ever beg?
No.
That's
but maybe
not
in
true.
a way.
You've begged me.
For what?
To laugh.
But I'll sing it for you. I sang it like this. I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy, a Yankee Doodle do or die, a real life nephew of my Uncle Sim's, born on the 4th of July. I've got a Yankee Doodle sweetheart. She's my Yankee Doodle joy. Yankee Doodle went to London just to ride the ponies. I am that Yankee Doodle boy.
Bravo! That was great.
You see how he brought music into my life.
I drew a crowd when I sang that.
Sure. Did you try to assimilate to this Yankee Doodle land?
Oh, of course.
Yeah?
Yes, I left everything behind me. I am an American now, and I was determined
Tell
to
her
be
what
one.
tell her what you first thought of women. The first woman you met.
I wrote a letter to the editor of a newspaper once. I had been in America for 6 years, and I said, "Dear editor, I ask you should give me some advice in my situation. I am a young man, 6 years alone in America, and I just met a fine girl. She has a flaw, however, that keeps me from marrying her. This flaw is that she has a dimple in the chin, and it is said that women who have this lose their first husband. This upset me so much, I don't know what to do. I'm afraid to marry her lest I die because of the dimple. I cannot rest until I hear your opinion about this. Respectfully, the unhappy fool."
Did you ever get a response?
Oh, of course.
Yeah?
He said, "Lighten up."
Charlie, I don't know if either of you know it. We have an actor here in the 20th century, Kirk Douglas, who's made it very big because of that dimple.
Well, he wasn't a woman then. It's only the women who have problems with losing their first husband. I don't believe that anymore, of course.
The ideas that we had when we came were not just politically right or wrong. We also had myths. Mm-hmm. We thought that the streets literally were, well, certainly not lined in gold, but we thought of, it's like the city of Chicago during the 20s was always a place of guns. We always thought that there were guns in Chicago. And we thought that people were bigger here than physically bigger. I remember.
They were bigger.
My mother told me that the men here were big, and she told me that I was foolish and that I would never realize my dreams, because she was as a matter of fact herself revolutionary before her time.
You inherited her traits.
Yes, and her nose, as a matter of fact. But
it's a nice nose.
Thanks. I grew it at home in my spare time. But she told me that I could not expect to find political freedom here or religious freedom, and that the men here were more concerned with making money than anything else.
Was that true?
No, certainly not. I do not pretend to make vast statements except for when they completely apply. The men here are delightful, especially the immigrants.
Well, you just mentioned about practicing your religion freely. When you came over, could you practice your Judaism freely? Were there synagogues to pray in? What about you, Charlie?
Well, sure. Well, I lived in New York, on the Lower East Side. We all were together. So, of course, we practiced our religion.
Did people ever react to you in a funny way? You're dressed differently. You have a different accent. Your culture is different. How did they accept you, or did they?
They didn't, at first. Tolerant. I suppose they had to be tolerant. There were so many of us pouring in every day. They really didn't have much choice but to be tolerant.
And they were enriched, and they knew it. There was an entire society changing, and we were no slouches. We came over and we were contributors. I'm afraid that you tend to think that your grandparents and the people at the turn of the century were very colorless, working hard people, yes, they were building something. There was something going on all the time. We don't know much about the turn of the century people. They worked very hard. They played very hard. And they established a culture the likes of which there is in no other country in your time.
How's that culture different?
It's funnier.
It'd be hard for me to believe because you feel they've been oppressed by the sweatshops. How's it funnier?
You have to laugh. If you work 15 hours.
He taught me that. You know that I was one day we were walking through Central Park, and I'm so serious about my intent, and I said, and then we discussed politics all the time, and I said, we were walking along Central Park, and he was pointing out the various mansions, naming their owners, the Vanderbilts, the Astorias, all of the architects, and beautiful architecture, but he disagreed, and I said, well, I think it's a shame that all of these people are living in these mansions when there are people working in sweatshops and groveling, and it's not. And he turned and he said, yes, I quite agree, but my main objection is that these buildings are so ugly.
Would you ever want to live in one?
Oh.
Well, we stayed a weekend in one. It was vacant, and we went in as hired help.
Anyways. Speaking of sexual liberation, that's one thing you advocated. Now, what were the people like who followed you? Were there many? Number small?
Well, I think that the movement was just taking hold. The suffragette movement here in America was just taking hold. So there were advocates. There were the chains were creaking already. I did not single-handedly set up a movement. I take a great deal of credit for advocating free love and for speaking my mind. He sighs because he cannot possess me. He may hold me, and he may not be able to resist me, but nor can he possess me. But that's all right. I can't possess him either. But let me see him with another anarchist.
Was that hard? And you had these long hours in the factories. You were a midwife. You were on your soapbox preaching for, you're advocating righteousness and justice.
Does life seem that terrible to you? Does our life seem that terrible?
We had vaudeville.
That's right.
When I got here, I thought it was a miracle that I could have a room.
Compared to our standards
and
today.
And close the door and say, you can come in or you can stay out. That's something I had never dreamed.
That's very simple.
Or that I could...
See, he did live in one of those mansions. That room was that mansion.
That was his mansion.
Just like the Tsar.
Sure.
Well, once you were living there you said you were there 6 years, you were writing about the woman with the dimple.
Yes.
After you were there in that room, could you see yourself aspiring to something bigger than that?
Well, in that anything was possible, yes.
What do you want to be?
What, I don't like what I am now?
You're always
I shouldn't
in process.
like what I am now?
You're always in process.
I think I'd like to have a studio. I think I'd like to take pictures of babies. I work in a park.
How your subject's very willing.
And it's hard to get people, no, not necessarily. It's hard to get people to sit for 2 minutes and have their picture taken. There's so much rush.
Why do you think? Why are they all so agitated?
I think people...
don't take their library
I think
books
there's
back
an
on
enormous
time.
amount of, I hate to say this, but greed, and things are accessible. There is so much that is accessible.
You said that very well, by the way.
Thank you, that the first one there gets it. So we're all rushing. We all want to be the first one there. Even you. You want to be the first to say something.
Is that true?
The first to liberate.
I don't want to, I am. Yes, of course, I think that what he says is very true. We take very little time out to just sit and look at someone else and smile.
Power.
Because of that, did that give you strength to pursue, to smile, to make people smile? Was that the impetus you had?
Oh, I think so.
He tried his hand at being a comedian in vaudeville.
Oh,
he was wonderful.
As a matter of fact, could you give us a sample of one of your vaudevillian acts?
You want to hear some jokes?
Love to.
I got 1 million of them. My wife, you won't like this joke. I'll tell it anyway. My wife, God bless her, she's always shopping. shopping, shopping. She goes to Plotkin's pickle stand. She holds up a pickle. She says, how much? He weighs it. He says, 2 cents. She holds up another one. She says, how much? He weighs it. He says, 2 cents. She holds up another one. He says, look, lady, it's a pickle, not a putz. It don't get bigger, don't get smaller, 2 cents. Oh, you like that one.
Yeah, anymore. Tell it again, tell it again. How does your audience like that one?
Sometimes they don't respond. They respond shyly at times, which surprises me. Some of the ladies in the audience respond very shyly to that.
You think they really would like to explode in laughter, but are afraid?
I think so. I think it happened to them a couple of times.
They do. They explode in laughter. There's always one every night who tells that joke.
Is it you?
Secretly behind the stage.
You had another one about 3 cantors in a restaurant?
Yeah, 3 cantors. They sit down in a restaurant for lunch. They look at the menu. The first one goes, oi, 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 oi. Second one goes, hey, yeah, 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 hey, hey. Third one goes, oi, 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 excuse me, oi, 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 oi. The waiter says, if you boys are going to talk business, I'll come back later.
Are these your own stories? Is this from your reactions? Your
I wrote every single one of my jokes.
It's from True Life. Tell them about your friends, the Cohens.
Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Cohen, good friends of mine. They moved to Spain. They
know them?
Oh, sure, sure. They're good friends of both of us.
Yeah, sure. They have this little daughter named Carmen. Well, he wanted a boy, of course, called her Cohen. Well, by the time she was 12, she didn't know whether she was Carmen or Cohen. You know what I mean?
One more time.
But seriously, folks.
Is this just making light of your situation? You just try and find funny things every day with your life?
It happened.
Don't you?
Life was funny. These people were just like, these people who came to see our shows are just like us. They live their lives every day. They work in the sweatshop, but you come home, you have to, the Irish go have beer.
Besides when I worked in a factory, I did this constantly for hours. I had this big wheel that released steam, and then there was a big valve. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Here. Put that in there.
You see, I haven't been working for a while. But this was boring. There's no life in that.
You would seem to be a source of inspiration.
So I'd have to laugh, wouldn't I?
I could see why you would, but I imagine there's a lot of people who wouldn't. Were you the types of people the others would go up to and say, please, Emma, help me. I need some strength. Please, Charlie.
When my friends first asked me to make short speeches, I declined. No, I was sure I could just never manage it. Yes, but they would accept no refusal. There was a poster, Emma Goldman to speak tonight at 9.
You didn't want to go?
No. Well, I didn't know what I would have to say that was so important. My heart was so filled. But as I approached the audience, words I never even heard myself utter before just came pouring forth.
What do you think that change was in you? It's just your heart coming out?
Yes, I was saying no. I was saying no, and it was the decision to say no. It's the same as the decision to love, is the decision to say no, and it's a very strong decision when you say, no, I'm not going to stand it anymore. I've demanded work, and you haven't given me work. I've demanded bread, and you won't give me the bread, then I'll take the bread.
Well, this is all very convincing, and I want people to see you continue this dialogue between the two of you in Tintypes, which is now playing at the Apollo Theater at 2540 North Lincoln Avenue. You can call the box office at 935-6100. Why should people see it in about 15 seconds?
Because it's song and dance in history form, or history in song and dance form. It's a great show.
Do you leave the theater singing and dancing? Oh, that's terrific. Well, Emma, Charlie, thank you so much for being here. I hope more people go see Tintypes. And for Focus, I'm Deborah Palmer.
Seemed